Okay, so Christmas is approaching, and this should be a time to be joyful and merry, but not for the EU. Who needs enemies when you have pals like these? And it appears like Europe is set to undergo yet another nightmare. For more than 2 years, the EU economy has been battered. We have witnessed severe deindustrialization throughout the Union, with Germany serving as a poster child. German enterprises, large multinational corporations, are shifting their operations from Germany to the United States and China. Volkswagen is on the verge of closing factories or implementing significant compensation cutbacks. And, based on the flow of money, the largest EU economy is on track for industrial annihilation. Since 2014, money has been moving out of Germany. However, after the conflict, we have seen an increase in private investment, leaving the nation on average. 80 billion euros per year are fleeing the economy. And Donald Trump is going to deliver the last blow to Europe's economy. The EU may be a NATO member or even a US ally, but Trump's trade war is not discriminatory.
The European Union has been particularly tough on the United States. They make it almost impossible for us to do business with them, and yet they send their cars and everything else back into the United States. And they can do whatever they'd like, but if they do that, then we put a big tax of 25% on their cars, and believe me, they won't be doing it very long. The European Union has not treated us well.
Assume you're Brussels, and you've followed Biden's orders to the letter, from seizing Russian assets to imposing oil sanctions. You basically followed the rules. Instead of earning a gift, a new president wants to impose tariffs on you. In reality, he is raising the stakes. Trump has demanded that the EU buy more US oil and gas without paying basic tariffs. And when Trump mentions gas, we all understand what he means. Expensive LNG ship crossing the Atlantic. And he made that perfectly plain in his statement, without ambiguity. Europe will have to pay. I warned the EU that they needed to make up their massive deficit with the United States. Otherwise, it's all about tariffs. Trump understands this. Getting Europe to purchase pricey US energy is a significant success for his economy. And given their alternatives, it's quite probable that they will capitulate. As the United States, you wish to bring businesses and manufacturers back home. There are only a few options remaining because your cost is already quite expensive. China is refusing to cooperate. They are maintaining their own technologies in-house. Punishing Beijing will not produce significant effects. China has Asia, Latin America, and the BRICS as alternate marketplaces. China also gets a lot of electricity from Russia. As a result, Washington has very little power over the Chinese. But Europe is entrapped. They're upset with China's EV tariffs. And Europe? They also distance themselves from cheap Russian electricity. Backtracking on either is politically unthinkable. This would be humiliating. And here's Trump's leverage. The United States is the EU's greatest trading partner. U.S. customers account for approximately 20% of all EU exports. Trump's tariffs, whether 10% or 25%, have the potential to crush EU industry. The cost of production is already quite expensive. Adding taxes on top of that will be unimaginable. Trump is now threatening tariffs, thus weaponizing the world's largest consumer market. And if the EU loses access, its industries will fall much more quickly. But let us also talk about the euro. Since 2021, Europe's currency has dropped by more than 6% versus the dollar. Why? Because demand for EU products has dropped. By extension, worldwide demand for euros to settle trade has dropped. And if Trump imposes significant tariffs on the EU, demand for European products would plummet even further. And this might result in another depreciation of the euro, making their imports more expensive. So now you're facing a fresh monetary crisis. Suddenly, the expense of living in Europe becomes intolerable. Currently, the United States contributes 15% of the EU's oil imports in the third quarter of this year. In addition, the majority of their LNG imports come from the United States, which is more than Qatar and Russia combined. What Trump wants is for Europe to abandon all other suppliers and rely only on U.S. LNG. And that is the cost of entering the U.S. consumer market tariff-free. And it was von der Leyen who instilled this thought in Trump's mind. In football, this is known as an own goal. It's strange and sad at the same time. But let us look at the facts here. Can Europe afford to purchase pricey U.S. oil and gas, particularly LNG? Won't it be counterproductive, destroying their industrial capacity? Even in September of this year, Europe's gas prices were 2 to 3 times higher than those between 2019 and 2021. German power, for example, will cost around 67 euros per megawatt hour in 2024. However, just 5 years ago, it cost just 38 euros, which is almost 40 to 50% cheaper, which takes us to a quandary. If Europe buys more U.S. LNG to replace Russia's cheaper supply, the higher production costs may exceed U.S. tariffs. So if Trump removes a 10% or 25% tax, but production costs rise by 25% or more, what is the point of purchasing U.S. LNG? You're back at square one. In fact, it's worse than starting again since your products are no longer marketable to the rest of the world. China, for one, will devour your lunch. Export deflation has occurred, and we can all agree that more inexpensive goods are needed now. But let's take a look from America's standpoint. If Europe is compelled to buy more U.S. oil and gas, Boomtown Charlie returns. Today, the U.S. is the world's largest LNG exporter. In 2023, U.S. exports outpaced all other countries by over 14 billion cubic feet per day, more than Russia, Qatar, or even Australia. Not just China, but also the U.S. energy complex stands to benefit significantly from this confrontation. But let us remember that this has come at the price of someone else. LNG is the most costly natural gas. You must liquefy it before transporting it on a specialized ship. You must then regasify it at the ultimate destination. This is not free. The method is quite costly. There is also a boil-off within the ship. At this point, the LNG vanishes into thin air. During the cruise, you may lose up to 0.25% of the entire volume per day. And all of this increases the cost of electricity. It's similar to hiring a limousine to deliver your Amazon order. That is why LNG is used as a last resort when other options are limited. The EIA identifies the largest buyers of U.S. LNG. And guess what? Surprise, surprise. It is Europe. Exports surged by more than 100% over 2021 levels, and in 2023, this increased by another 7%. Europe is purchasing roughly 8 billion cubic feet per day, and Trump wants them to buy even more. And this is where we must give a standing ovation, since Trump has fully cornered Europe. If you want to enter the U.S. market, you must acquire our pricey gas supply. And if you listen to mainstream media, they focus a lot on U.S. LNG capacity, claiming that the U.S. has reached its limit and has nothing left to export to Europe. However, according to the EIA, the United States is about to increase its export capacity in 2025 and beyond. And this will be a significant rise, shocking even OPEC members. North America's LNG export capacity is set to quadruple by 2028. It's at least an extra 10 billion cubic feet every day, and like any other project, you want to ensure demand before building out supply, as Trump is doing. Simply look at where the new facilities will be placed. The majority will be located in the Gulf of Mexico. Golden Pass and Port Arthur are the new LNG terminals that are currently under development, and Europe, as a client, permits U.S. LNG to simply cross the Atlantic and get paid. So we've established that the United States will be the main winner here. EU funds will be used to assist build up the American energy complex. Big oil is set to grow even bigger with Europe as a consumer. It is equally crucial to recognize that this reliance on the U.S. extends beyond the consumer sector. The ability to print currency, combined with a large consumer economy, provides significant leverage. But think about it. What type of leverage could be more urgent? Well, it's security and the possibility of the United States leaving NATO. And the United States is reminding Europe to pay up immediately. In a less than pleasant message, Trump has demanded that NATO nations pay at least 5% of their GDP on defense. This message is, of course, addressed at the EU. So it's a double whammy. And 2025 is going to be a disaster for Europe. Once again, Trump is putting financial pressure on Europe, and I'm sure he understands the EU can't really afford it. They can theoretically pay for it, but the cost would be too expensive. The current NATO aim is 2% of GDP on defense, but the bulk of EU members are simply scrapping it. The current aim is 3%, but Trump wants to increase it to 5%. And if Europe fails to cooperate, the United States will have free rein. Trump may either impose tariffs on NATO based on defense budget or do the worse. He might withdraw military support for Europe. He may even forsake Article 5, which would be unimaginable for them. We already know Trump wants to resolve the war between Russia and Ukraine. He has stated this several times. So financing will run out around 2025. Can Europe afford to combat Russia without U.S. assistance? And how much money can they divert toward defense before the actual economy collapses? Which is more important, manufacturing additional tanks or preserving the car industry? And these are important problems for the EU since Trump will compel them to pick. So, ladies and gentlemen, 2025 will be crazy. The United States has handed Europe a Christmas surprise they never expected. Trump is all about MAGA, and he is going to do it at Europe's price. And, as things stand, he's likely to get his requests satisfied. The EU is out of alternatives. But tell me what you think. Will the EU abandon everything for US LNG? And can Europe afford Trump's promise of 5% defense spending? Please let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, like, and subscribe as we traverse these tumultuous times.